right now. So, welcome everyone once again to the Big Data Case Study Night. This is our 5th event this year, and it's going to be the last event of this year. And for sure, we'll see you again at our future events starting January. So stay tuned. And in order to keep posted about all the updates from our community, I strongly recommend you to follow our community page and also join the group. I will share the link in the chat. And today we have with us the moderator, our Taras Klova, who is Big Data Competence Manager at SoftServe, and also he is the person who helps us the most in running the Big Data community. And we have Kamil Nowinski. It's a technical architect at Avanade, and we're going to hear his talk, Azure Data Factory Deployment Challenges. So before I pass the word to Taras and Kamil, I would like to remind you to stay active. Like, feel free to leave comments, reactions, whatever you want. Also, ask questions, because together with our partners, PACT, we're gonna do a small giveaway of Azure Data Engineering Cookbook as a free ebook prize for the people who will be the most active, who will be asking questions. So don't miss this chance. And without further ado, I will pass the word to our moderator, Taras.
Yes, thank you a lot. And thank you for having me here. Maybe one remark about position of Kamil, yes, and more titles, because I also know that Kamil, Microsoft Data Platform, most valuable professional, my famous podcaster. I almost listen to all his recordings. It's really nice, and I hope that soon you will return back to these recordings, and we will have more to listen together with you and your awesome speakers. And also Kamil, group manager at his company and author of ADF tools, yes. And maybe this is the main reason why we have today Kamil, because today we'll have session about deployment of pipelines. And this is really nice tool, which I personally use in my work. And I hope that today we will have session or demos on these tools, and you also will know how to use this nice functionality.
Thank you very much, Victoria and Taras, for your introduction and opening this session. Yeah, thank you very much, Taras, for your kind words. Let me maybe share my screen. Actually, I didn't yet do that yet, so you will see my slides, I hope.
Yeah, all good, we see it.
Cool. Okay, so yeah, as Taras mentioned, actually, and Victoria as well, that today's topic is Azure Data Factory deployment challenges. So during this session, I will be talking about only the deployment. You will see why in a couple of minutes, and then I extend my point of view and explain it even better for the next at least 16 minutes, okay? So a few words about me. As Taras mentioned, I'm Kamil Nowinski, Microsoft Data Platform MVP. I'm speaking, I'm blogging, I'm general data enthusiast. I'm group manager and / analyst architect, analytics architect at Avanade, UK and I, with over 20 years of experience with, in IT, actually, generally in IT. Actually, I started my journey when I was 10, started programming with some basic on 8-bit Atari. Anyway, I'm also a member of data community in Poland. I visited Ukraine a few years ago before this horrible things happened in the country. So that's where we met with Taras, I think. It was a few years ago, I believe, if I remember, Kyiv. But yeah, definitely, I'm looking forward to back there and see each other again in person. Yeah, so really fingers crossed to resolve all these problems with this terrible war in your country. So yeah, as mentioned, as Taras mentioned, also I'm author of the ADF tools, which I will show you, and probably during the second part of this session. But before I do that, I need to explain you why this the whole journey started, why I created this, and how this helps you with your day-to-day business work in the project. Yeah. And you can find me on the GitHub. And I have 2 profiles and multiple projects open source. Okay, that's, I think, enough about me from this perspective, from my profile. I have my blog also, which is secureplayer.net. There you can find the technical post in there for actually various skill skill levels. And you can find there some cheat sheets, recommended books that I was reading in the past, that sometimes I'm reading still, you know, recommended links, posts, you know, in the internet. You know, in the area of the cloud, or on the Azure, everything is changing every day. Yeah, so our work, nature of our work, is to following all those things. Obviously, it's not possible to following everything, but at least if you are interested on that kind of topic or area like data engineering, you can find actually the useful information in my blog. As Taras also was kind to mention the podcast. I started the podcast at the same moment when I started my blog, which was like a few years ago already. And you can find me also on the YouTube channel. I'm sometimes recording some video. Hopefully, I will be back to recording more frequently, more often soon. Because recently I'm crazy busy, like probably all of us. So that's why, you know, priorities I need to take and choose the appropriate priorities. In terms of podcast, actually, I hide this slide from my presentation this year, but because Taras mentioned that, so I just decided, okay, show that. Yeah, so the podcast is already, we have like 30 something episodes. Yeah, it was appearing every month, but unfortunately, due to the time restrictions and yeah, not enough time to carry on with this, I had to stop at some point. It was like a year ago or so. So hopefully I will back to this. I'm thinking about this to back to this, and even not only the podcasting and audio, but also maybe you know, recording the video online and talking to the guests online when our cameras will we switch on. Yeah, so that would be that you can feel much better and see faces, and you know, that kind of much better, you know, form of conversation and watching. Yeah. So yeah, it's still there. You can find it in the link in my blog, so you can listen this as audio, and you can find it also as a transcript on my blog. Okay. So as I mentioned, I have also my own YouTube channel. So sometimes, you know, it's better to explain something, some tricky things, techniques, or methods, showing something actually, rather than just in the blog post describing some steps. Yeah, so it's easier. And you know, those days we are all busy. We have limited amount of time to learning. So sometimes, you know, watching the 5 minutes or 15 minutes video is easier, and we can very much more quicker understand some topic rather than just going through the blog post and searching in Google. So yeah, I would like to encourage you to just take a look on there. The main topics that I'm just talking about right now is Azure Data Factory, Synapse, DevOps, including those two, plus SSDT, which is Secure Server Data Tools. So managing data tools for database projects, etc. Okay, slides will be available under this link. So it will redirect you to my GitHub, where all the slides are saving for audience. Yeah, so you don't have to do any screenshot, anything like this. Just focus on the session. Just focus on what I will be presenting and talking and explaining, because there will be tons of things. And if you are pretty new in this topic, it might be a little bit overwhelming. Yeah. Okay, so let's move on to the agenda for today's meeting. So as I mentioned already at the beginning, I will be talking about Azure Data Factory, but deployment only, okay? I won't show you any framework. I will not show you anything like how to deploy pipeline, how to create, how to configure them, and etc., yeah? No, that's not the topic of this session. But you're probably familiar on all of these things, yeah? Because if you are developing some pipelines in Azure Data Factory, then you are facing the problem, okay, how to deploy this on the environment, yeah? How to promote this to the further environment, like, because normally we should have the Git integration enabled only on dev environment. This is the environment that we should have access to. But then, of course, in most of the project, I believe those days, yeah, we should promote this to the other environments, like at least test environment and production environments. In some more complex scenarios or bigger companies or enterprises, you might have even more environments, like some additional UAT environment, maybe pre-production environment, and etc., etc. And we would like to actually automate these steps, yeah? So this is what we will be talking about. So I will show you two, maybe three, because the second one would be we'll have two options, methods of deployment of Azure Data Factory, yeah? And then I will show you how this method works, what is the differences between them. And also I will show you what is the NPM module from Microsoft about the IDF, how this can help in terms of fully automate the build pipeline. And then the second part of this session, I will show you like how these ADF tools can make your life easier and better in terms of deployment of Azure Data Factory. Okay, so let's move on. Before I start showing you some demo and technical details, we need to just be on the same page. Yeah, that I need to just explain you all what we know those days and what we don't know, and explain few nuances, let's say. Yeah. So as a developer, let's say, when we're working with Azure Data Factory, I believe you have a Git repository enabled for your Azure Data Factory. If you don't have, please do that immediately tomorrow. Okay, this is save a lot of your work and additional efforts that you need to have. We need to do if you are working only in live mode for some strange reason. Anyway, so this is the assumption that we have. Yeah, we have Git repo enabled, and we are working on dev environment with our Azure Data Factory, which is on the bottom of the screen. Okay, so as a developer, I'm creating new branch because I want to develop some feature. Okay, so I'm creating new branch. I can do that, you know, from Azure DevOps portal if my Git is located in Azure DevOps, or I can do it from GitHub if I have my code in GitHub. Or I can create this new branch directly from Azure Data Factory as well. So it's not a problem. Okay, so let's say I'm starting developing some new feature. So I'm creating new branch. This is how we should work with every single project, actually, yeah, with every single feature with the Git. So then I can connect this, I can select this new branch, or it will be selected automatically when I created it from Azure Data Factory. And this will stand new Azure Data Factory instance for me. This is the Git mode Azure Data Factory instance, yeah? It's something at the first point, at the first sight, it's very similar. You might think that this is the same, but actually it's not. There's some nuances between them, so we need to know and we need to be aware of this. Yeah. So if you have this Git enabled and if you have working with some branch with code, so then you are working with separate instance of Azure Data Factory. This is very important, because this instance are reading and writing to the code directly, creating or committing and sending new commits to the branch, to the code repository when you click save in the Azure Data Factory, saving any objects or all of the objects that you changed. Yeah. So this is how we are working. Yeah, our work can be saved automatically by, maybe not automatically, once we click save button. Yeah, it's automatically saving the changes, the code to the branch, which is good. This is how we want to work. Yeah. Then once we finish developing this pull request, once we finish developing feature, we are creating pull request. Yeah, this is the way where someone of our colleagues from the team can review the code with you together and approve the changes. Yeah, so this is protect us to not bringing any false or wrong code to the main, let's say, branch. In my case, the main branch, I simplified this solution. Actually, in my case, the main branch is the collaboration branch. This is the branch that you can publish the code from. Yeah. So actually, you can switch Azure Data Factory and switch to the other branch like main or master as well, and working with that branch directly as well. But sometimes, and generally, it should be protected with branch policy and not allows anyone to directly write and work with this branch. Yeah, so that's why you should create new branch first and then do the changes, develop whatever you need to develop, and then create pull requests and merge those changes back with appropriate process. Yeah. When you switch working with main or master branch, from this branch, you might not be able to save anything or create new features, but at least you will be able to publish this, because only this collaboration branch gives you an opportunity to publish the changes to the okay, I will explain this, where this will be publishing. Yeah, so the first thing, as you can see on this slide, is publishing to the ADF publish branch. Yeah, it's in the ADF publish branch. This branch contains completely different kind of code. Yeah, because the process generate ARM template to be able to deploy this code from ARM template to the Azure. But also, it does two things. It also publishing to the, which is not showed in this slide, it's publishing to the live mode, which is on the bottom of this screen. Yeah, so two action is doing. It's publishing to the ADF publish branch and publishing to the live mode. Okay, so next, let's say we've done this. We want to deploy this. We would like to do this automatically using Azure DevOps and DevOps pipelines. Yeah. So first step is actually build CI pipeline. Create build pipeline. Yeah. This build pipeline should actually get the ARM template code from this ADF publish branch, and produce the artifact. This artifact can be used in the release pipeline then. This, what I'm showing here, the whole slide, is the first method of deployment. Okay, this is the method recommended by Microsoft, by the way. Yeah, so that's why we are using ARM template. That's why we are using ADF publish branch here, and etc. Okay. So in the release pipeline, we have some specific steps that allows us to deploy to the target environment. In this case, first environment will be our dev, but because the ADF is not like a simple component that we can just deploy ARM template as it is and forget, we need to add some additional step. So as you can see in the middle, you have deploy ARM template, which is the very standard task in the release pipeline in Azure DevOps that allows you to deploy ARM template from files. Yeah. But actually, additionally, you need to add some additional steps like stop triggers and start triggers before and after. Yeah, because if you do not stop trigger and if you try to redeploy them, actually the whole action fails. Yeah, so that's why you need to do that. You need to remember about this thing. So actually, in total, you have 3 steps. Yeah. And then you will be able to deploy the actual code of Azure Data Factory, of all your pipelines, data set, and et cetera, to the 3 environments. That in this case, yeah, I have 3, but maybe you have more. So this is the Microsoft approach method of deployment. Okay. So let me move on to the next slide, which is a little bit different. And in this case, as you can see here, the differences is small. The first difference is, as you can see on the top, is that we are not getting any code, any ARM template from the ADF publish branch. Yeah, forget about this. In this method, we are deploying directly from code. And our code is actually in main and the other branches. This is the code that we are interested in. Yeah. So this method is called deployment directly from code, from JSON files. So in build pipeline this time, we need to produce some artifacts as well. But in this time, we are not generating ARM templates because we are not publishing from ARM templates. This is a different approach. We are directly deploying from this, reading those JSON files and pushing them to the Azure using API. Therefore, in the release pipeline, we have 2 steps. Yeah. So generally, if you like to deploy something, any object actually to the Azure, you can use PowerShell or any other script using API to publish some object, prepared object to the Azure. Yeah. And I created a few years ago the Azure.datafactory.tools, which is in short called ADF tools. Yeah, so the whole module in PowerShell allows you to just provide the whole folder of Azure Data Factory, which contains all the files, all the structure, and all the JSON files, and actually deploys all the things for you. Yeah, with one simple command. Otherwise, you would have to, take care of the dependencies, read the file appropriately, and etc. Believe me, this is a lot of efforts. I tried this at the beginning, and that's why I decided, okay, this is not simple. So something need to be changed. Yeah. So you can use directly the PowerShell module code and step to execute this module and appropriate command. Or if you prefer, there's also extension in Azure DevOps. With one task, you can do everything. Yeah. So it will stop the triggers, it will restart the triggers, whatever we needed previously. Yeah. And as you can see, the good thing also is that you don't have to use ADF publish branch because we don't need, in this case, the ARM templates. Yeah. Okay, so this is the second method of how we can deploy Azure Data Factory. So now you can ask, okay, what's the differences? Yeah, so I described the differences a little bit on the high level, but so why these things here? Like why we are even talking about these things? Okay, so let me to do few steps back, actually few years back, and when I started looking at ADF a bit more seriously and thinking about, okay, I developed some code, I would like to deploy this into the other environments. So I was thinking because I noticed that there's 2 methods actually, and I saw some scripts, so I knew that you could do that with some API and PowerShell, and I knew also that Microsoft show us how to do that with ARM template and etc. So I decided, okay, let's ask people what community used those days. Yeah, and as you can see, it was March 2020, which is almost 2.5 years ago, and actually people were split. Yeah, so I thought then, okay, that's good. It means it's not only me in this situation that I have problem with this. Maybe I don't understand this fully and etc. Yeah. So then I decided to go into the the second direction, the second method of deploying Azure Data Factory, because it was much easier, because it was it could be fully automate and etc. And more things actually, which I will explain in several more slides in next minutes. Okay, so let's take a look on pros and cons of these two methods of deployment. So first, if we take a look on the ARM template deployment, so this Microsoft method, yeah, so it's faster because it's incremental, it's native to the Azure, so everything is going on behind the scenes in the cloud, yeah. This fact that you deploy something from ARM template is always saved in the deployments in the resource group. So it's also good, yeah? We can have the monitoring and auditing stuff in there. So this is the pros of the first method. The cons of the method, or the second method, is that actually the process is slower. It's slower because it's deploying all the objects one by one, okay? Has to care of the dependencies, so we need to just figure out what is dependencies and deploy this one by one using API. And because of that, because of its using API, it also doesn't appear in the deployments. Okay, bad things about the ARM template deployment, yes, it's that like you need to parameterize element in the ARM template. If you would like to replace or substitute some specific link services pointer or any other configurable things which make the environments different between each other, you need to parameterize this in ARM template parameter. And this is there's a restriction of 256 parameters. And also, the bad thing is actually you need to deploy the whole Azure Data Factory. Yeah, you cannot just decide, okay, I would like to deploy this, 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 and that objects. Yeah, or maybe this subset of object. Yeah, it's not possible. And there was some limitation about one publish branch, which I will explain in a minute. Please don't do the screenshot of this slide because it's not fully true yet. So, and in the past, it was also the manual publish step. Yeah, it was in the past, it was not possible to automate fully and generate this ARM template with some pipelines. We had to click the publish button in UI, someone like developer, and then the ADF ARM template was generated to this ADF publish. That was the biggest problem, I think, of this approach. Whereas the pros, the benefits of using the second approach is that you can parameterize very easily any artifact of Azure Data Factory, any object in it. And you can do which I found very important for most of the people and most of the project, that you can do selective deployment. Yeah, so you can actually select which object you would like to deploy for this pipeline maybe, and what others for other pipelines. So actually you can have one big Azure Data Factory that works for, I don't know, maybe different divisions in your company or some business domains, and you would like to split the deployment, yeah, but still having everything in one code and in one repo, yeah. And also this approach eliminates the usage of ADF publish branch, so which I will show you also a little bit later. Okay, so that was true before 2021. Okay, so at the beginning, actually it was at the end, I think, for 2021. Yeah, I need to add the month here as well, because I remember it was between the years. It's happened the preview of Microsoft show the NPM module. So this NPM module, actually, we started being able to deploy and automatically deploy and generate ARM template. Yeah, so Microsoft need to use the NPM library that allows you to automate the generation of ARM template, which is good, because finally we were able to fully automate this end-to-end process without manually clicking the button. Yeah, so that was a great improvement. However, this npm library is not very user friendly. Hopefully, I will be able to show you that later on during the demo. And it's still requires some additional steps. So you need to spend actually a lot of hours to understand this, to go through the documentation, what you need to do, spend probably many hours, if not days, to just, run this, check how it works and why it's failing, why it's not generating ARM template, and so forth and so on. So yeah, this is since 2021, I think January, that was January. Okay, so why actually, why this is a problem with this approach, with Microsoft approach? I still think that people still prefer, deploying from code, because if you take a look on the documentation, which, don't get me wrong, is great that Microsoft publishing some documentation and updating this very often and frequently. But if you start looking at how to deploy Azure Data Factory, you will start probably with the first link, continuous integration and delivery in Azure Data Factory. Then you will see very, very, very long page, and then with multiple or several, links and references to the other documentation, to the other pages. So that's why you will be sent through the other pages, like automated publishing for continuous integration and delivery, how to use custom parameters for ARM template, and on top of that, you need to understand how to start triggers if you would like to build something on your own, or if you would like to deploy this from ARM template, because you need to do that. So Microsoft, okay, showing us some pre-post deployment script written in PowerShell, that's great, but you need to understand this, you need to adopt it, and etc. and etc. So after all those hours or days, if you were not familiar with this before, good luck with this. Maybe you will be ready to deploy something on other environment than dev. So actually, I wish you not following this this way, and that's why I created something that makes our life better and easier. Okay, so what we can do with in different way, how we can automate these things. So as I mentioned, we don't need this IDF publish branch, because we are not going to use this ARM template. We can generate the ARM template actually automatically right now with this npm module. And so that's why we can get the code from the collaboration branch, from the main branch. Okay. So in this way, we can use the main branch, and we don't have to click the publish button any longer. Okay, we still can do that and deploy the code to the live mode of dev, but actually this will be done by our CI/CD process. Okay, so then, as I mentioned earlier, you still, if you would like to do this with Microsoft approach, you need to stop, start triggers, deploy ARM template, but at least you can automate this generation of ARM template step. Okay, before we move on, I'm just wondering if there's any questions from the audience, because this is the good moment when we can hold on for a second.
Currently, I don't see any question,
okay.
But we also have here member of SQL family group, Andre from Portugal.
Hi, Andre. Yeah, I noticed that that he joined after we start, I think, very shortly.
Yes.
Maybe hello,
Andre,
everyone.
you have some comments.
So far, this has been amazing. So a lot of people actually request this kind of information. So it's really, really good that, Kamil, that you are showing all of this information now.
Cool.
Yes.
Great to hear that.
I have quite tricky question. How to synchronize database changes, schema changes, and changes in your data pipelines?
Schema changes.
Yes.
Actually, this is I think this is a completely separate topic. How to maintenance the code of database and synchronize this between environments. That's
Yeah,
your question, I believe.
No. Imagine that you want to change your database structure, yes, schema, but this will impact some of your data pipelines, yes. And how to build this synchronization and how to manage these changes in way where you have separately database and you also have your Azure Data Factory.
Very good question.
Yes.
Very good question. So actually the easiest way is to keep everything in the same repository. Yeah. So if you keep everything in the same repository, but of course you can just logically you should split this somehow. So very often what I'm doing, I'm just creating like folder like Azure Data Factory or IDF, yeah, for ADF code, and then SQL database or name of the SQL database for just code for database. And in this folder I have SSDT project, database project. And if in that way you will be changing any code, whatever it would be, like SQL database or maybe pipeline, because it works in both ways, yeah. When you need to synchronize those things, yeah. So actually, developer, when he or she is creating some changes, as I mentioned in the beginning, it should create the new branch, change everything in both parts, yeah, that they always will be synchronized to each other, and then create pull request, merge everything back. And at the same time, in the same release, you should deploy both. Yeah.
Yes.
Unless you have much more complex scenario and environment, and for some reason you need to have the repo in a separate place. But then of course, you need to just, in that way, I think you need to just, much more control what you have in which release and etc., and make sure that even if you have different changes and the code in different repos, you still can grab all those changes and wrap up them in the same or different artifacts, but in the same build pipeline. Yeah. So in that way you can versioning them. Yeah. But of course, then you need to be more careful how to control the changes, how to synchronize those changes between two environments. The most easiest way is to keep them in the same repo, and that works for, from my experience so far, it worked for 90% of my projects, and it worked well.
Yes. Thank you. I think we can proceed further.
Cool. Okay, so the next thing would be the demo, and before I move that, I have a question. So if you are building some automation, what would you prefer? I know, unfortunately, I can't see the audience and I can't see any answers right now here. So I'm just asking you. You can think about this. Probably some of you would choose PowerShell, yeah, but probably most of you would say like, okay, I would prefer still like Azure DevOps. I would like, because I don't know PowerShell. I never use it. I don't have that kind of skills, which is completely fine, yeah. So I have, in that case, I have good and bad news for you, yeah. So the good news is that I will show you example in Azure DevOps, but the bad news is that I will show you the PowerShell anyway. Okay, so but you will see why. Okay, the first demo. Let me switch to the code. And guys, by the way, I'm not rushing very much. So this session is prepared for more than 1 hour. Actually, it's prepared for 1 hour, but I'm not rushing myself very much. So we probably will be like 70 minutes or something. Are you okay with that?
Yes, sure.
Okay, cool. So the first thing, why I'm starting here actually, yeah. So I will be presenting you some pipelines, because I have some links like what I was showing you in the slides. I would like to show you how to build these things in the Azure DevOps. Unfortunately, we will not be building everything from scratch, because that would be too much effort, too much time. And instead of spending 1 hour, we would spend 2 or 3 hours here. Yeah, it doesn't make sense. So I will show you what's the differences and how I build actually those steps. Yeah, so the first thing is actually to show you how to build the build and release pipeline with, let me maybe zoom it a little bit, with Azure DevOps. So first one will be, as far as I remember, it's opening here, and it shouldn't opening here. I would like this here. It's using Microsoft approach as far as I remember. So let me double check. So in build pipeline, what we have in build pipeline, actually we are getting the code from ADF publish, as you can see here. Okay, and then what we are doing, nothing actually tricky, nothing magic. Yeah, we're just wrapping this as an artifact and nothing else from this perspective. Okay. Then okay, then let me maybe click this. Next one will be publish. So if we have this ARM template wrap up as artifact, then we need to build the release pipeline and publish it to the environment. In my case, I have 2 UAT environments. So the first one is easy one, is the ARM template deployment task, as you can see here. But you actually can notice that we have one step before. So the one step before is to create Azure Data Factory instance, the empty instance of Azure Data Factory, because the deployment step from ARM template will not do that for us. Okay, so it would just fail for the first time. Yeah, so we need to just create the ADF before. Yeah. So that's why I have 2 steps actually, and I mentioned that we need to stop and start triggers. So in the normal situation, you need to add more steps. Yeah, so creating ADF, then do the pre-deployment, which is the stopping triggers, and in this case, I'm using pre-post deployment script developed shared by Microsoft, and then the actual deployment of Azure Data Factory. Before you start triggers, actually, you need to deploy also something which is called global parameters in Azure Data Factory. So we have separate script for this, separate PowerShell script for this. And then finally, when we have all the object in place, we can restart the triggers that should be actually enabled and ready to go. Yeah. So as you can see, 5 steps. We need 5 steps to just deploy Azure Data Factory, to just deploy one component, which is a little bit crazy for me. Okay, so this is the Microsoft approach with getting the ARM templates from ADF branch. Let's go to the next one. This example, I will show you this time with a fully automated way to not touching the ADF publish branch. In this way, we'll be using this npm library from Microsoft to generate ARM template. Okay, so we are doing this in the build pipeline. Yeah, because in the build pipeline, we need to generate the code and wrap up this as an artifact. So this is what we are doing. And here it's even more steps. So because it's npm library, you need to install the npm library package. Then I'm doing this some extra stuff here. You don't have to do that. Yeah, I'm just testing what this npm version is installed. Yeah, just for troubleshooting purposes. And then I'm running some commands. You can follow the documentation from Microsoft to figure it out what the command is and what kind of parameters you should provide. Yeah. So this command is validate. This actually validates what you have in your Azure Data Factory as a code, as all the objects. Yeah, so it's actually equivalent of the action if you click the validate button, validate all button in the UI. Okay, so this is how you can automate this step. And export is actually the step that interesting us the most. It's generating, actually it's doing 2 things. It validates the whole code and exporting and generating the ARM template. Yeah, so this is the most important step. And then at the end, of course, we are wrapping this up as an artifact. Okay, then in that way, you know, the release pipeline looks exactly the same, because we have ARM template, we just generate and get this ARM template from different place. Yeah, so that's the difference. So I'm not going to show you the release because it looks exactly the same. Okay. Now let me see if that's, yeah. So yeah. So now we need to go back to the slides. So now I will show you about and tell you about ADF tools. Yeah. What is that exactly? ADF tools is actually two tools. Yeah, the first one is PowerShell module, which you can find in PowerShell Gallery. It's open source project and free, completely free for everyone. And Azure DevOps extension. Azure DevOps extension actually is built on top of the PowerShell module because it's completely using PowerShell module behind the scenes. That's the architecture. Yeah, it's the extension only to show you in the very nice way that you can configure all the required parameters if you're not feeling comfortable with PowerShell. Yeah. So depends on what you prefer. You can use this or that. Yeah, it's doing exactly the same things. And with these tools, you can do a few things. For now, we will focus on build and publish, because in build, you can build the code and generate whatever you need. So I will explain that later. But for now, we'll focus on the publish step, the one in the middle, because that was the first actually and the only one task. For publishing the code directly from code to the Azure Data Factory instance. And then there's another task that I will explain you later. Everything, all the links and useful information and links to the other, the repositories, to the documentation you can find on this URL. Okay. Oh, this is not needed. Demo number 2. How to deploy this with PowerShell. As I mentioned, I will show you some PowerShell and I will explain you why. Okay. So PowerShell is not that hard, Actually, if you understand the basic, you might love it because it will helps you a lot with, your daily basis, work. Depends, of course, of your type of work, but I found it very helpful, when I learned this first time, like 3 or 4 years ago. I started very easily, understanding how to do some basic things. Yeah, so actually, you don't have to have, big knowledge about PowerShell just to use the modules out of there. Yeah. So I will show you that from this perspective first. Yeah. So we need to install first the module. And the module, to install the module, you need to just execute one simple line like this. Yeah. I'm not going to run this because I have this module already installed. Then you need to import this module with another command just to import the code already downloaded and installed on your machine to the current session. My current session here is is under this Visual Studio Code. So let me run this. I'm selecting this line and clicking F8, which run only this selected line for me. Yeah, and in the terminal below, you can see that the module was imported. Yeah. Cool. So let's double check what kind of version we have right now. So yeah, the version is 0.97, which is probably not the last one as far as I remember. Recently, I released the version 0.100 something. So I don't have the latest one on my machine here. Okay, so this is the first initial step that we need to do in terms of using this module. As you can see, it's very easy. You don't have to have big knowledge about PowerShell, just few commands. And then the last thing we need to do is actually execute the command from the PowerShell module, okay, that we already imported. So we'll be doing this in here, okay? So the actual code is here. So as you can see, it's one command, which is called publish ADF v2 from JSON. How do we know this command? Of course, everything is in the documentation, and the documentation is in the GitHub. Okay, everything is open source, everything is free. So you can find out everything in there. So this is the command that publish the whole code of Azure Data Factory to the target instance. So I have here some variables that I'm initiating them. Yeah, so 4 variables: resource group, target resource group, target data factory, name, location. location is only needed for the first run to create Azure Data Factory, because this task does everything for you. With one execution, it does everything for you. It's creating Azure Data Factory instance if that doesn't exist yet. It's stopping triggers, it's starting triggers, and doing even more, which I'll explain you later. Okay, so that's why we are providing these parameters. And the root folder is the most important one, showing location of the code that we have our Azure Data Factory. And let me show you that in the repo. You can see this as well. So this is the pointer to my big factory test, and big factory test contains subfolders like this: dataset, linked services, and so on and so forth. Yeah. So the code actually will be reading all the files from here, and yeah, and publishing them to the target. Okay, let's try to run this. We'll see if this works. And I'm running this first with the dry run, which means actually it will run everything except the real publish, except running any sending any request to the Azure. Okay, and this is to just sometimes we would like to just test and see what happens, what would happen. Yeah, so you can see like the module, the command will be reading the location, reading all the files located in the subfolders and etc. So actually this is the good sign, because it means that we have some objects already that we pointed appropriate location of Azure Data Factory. If you would see all the 000 here, it means that probably you pointed wrong location. Yeah. And then, replacing all the properties, environment related. We'll back to this in a few minutes time. And then at the end, you will see that, okay, everything is like this. This is the several object of ADF object, and that's it, because we skip the real deployment here. Yeah. So this is how we are passing the variables defined below above. Yeah. And here we have this dry run switch. If this appear, it means that it's just providing switch. Yeah. The next run will be the real run without this dry run switch, as you can see. So let's run it and see what happened. Yeah. And again, why I'm showing this you? Yeah, because I promised that I will explain you why I'm just showing you the PowerShell that you might hate. Yeah. So I'm showing you because, as I mentioned, even if you decide to using the extension in Azure DevOps, this code will be running behind the scenes. So it's good that you know and you understand how it works, what kind of parameters are passing, and what actually you will see in the log of your Azure DevOps agent. Yeah, because if any problems or troubleshooting, the logs comes with a help. Yeah, because there's a lot of information what is going on during the deployment, and that's intentional. Yeah, so we saw this, and now as you can see, there's stop triggers, getting triggers, and then deployment of all the IDF objects, and step by step is checking what is the dependency and starting deploying object and finishing deploying object. I don't have too many here for obvious reason, but you can imagine how it works if you have plenty of the objects and the ADF is pretty big. Yeah, at the end is deleting objects not in source. I mean, everything is configurable in this tool. Yeah, so this is the optional step, and as you can see, nothing happened in this way because by default is off. Yeah, and starting triggers. Yeah, in this case there's no triggers to be started. Okay. And the whole deployment took 19 seconds, which is not bad, but also automatically we don't have many objects in here. Yeah. Okay, that's it. So this is the most simple way how you can deploy Azure Data Factory. Yeah. So this is the simple, very, very simple way, and just introduce you how to do this because the tool is new for you, and also PowerShell might be new for most of you or some of you. Yeah. So I hope this doesn't look that horrible, that I think you understand the principle of this code, because this is very similar to all the other languages. Yeah. So I think everyone can understand and already, if you didn't know the PowerShell before, you know a little bit right now, yeah? So you are a step forward, yeah? Okay, let's do something a little bit more complex. Let's add one small complexity to this. How to control the behavior of this command, because as I mentioned, everything is happening with inside of this one command. So of course, we would like to control what's happening in there, yeah? So we have the additional options, yeah? So by default, there's some set of options set up, but if we like to set some different one, we have something like publish options. To generate object of publish options, we have a command like new ADF publish option, and the result of this command we can assign to the another variable, yeah? So let me execute this code, and I should be able to show you, yeah, what kind of properties we have in this object, yeah? So I can see, as you can see, there are several of them here. Most of them are just Boolean, true or false, yeah? You can control what should be done inside or not, yeah? If you want to create new instance of Azure Data Factory or not, by default is true, yeah? If you like to delete objects not in source in the target ADF, by default is false. So all those information, all those details you can find in the documentation. Yeah, but also you can check what is in there by the default in here like this. Yeah, I can just double check. I just created the new object by default. It should have some variables, some values. Yeah, but I can decide. Okay, I want to change these three properties like this. I'm just, assigning the new values to these properties of this object. Imagine this object as an instance of the class, yeah? If you're familiar with C++ or C or C# or C# language, yeah? So in this case, I would like to decide, okay, don't create Azure Data Factory instance, delete code which is not in source any longer. So it means it will synchronize what we have in our code in the target, because by default, it's not doing these things. And in this case, I don't want to stop and start triggers, okay? So yeah, this is the options that I'm setting in here. And when I run this code, the appropriate object will be set up and properties. And what I need to just change in my previously run command, I need to just add another parameter to it. As simple as that, okay? So as you can see at the below here, I'm just passing this object, this variable is called O to the option parameter. That's it. This is the only difference between the previous code. So in that way, I can control the behavior of the whole command, okay? Okay, if you see any questions in the chat or something like this, like let me know in the meantime right now, yeah. So you can just interrupt me. So because some of the question might be related to the code that I'm showing right now, yeah. So would be good to discuss them here.
We had only one question, and it was related to language which we can use. Yes, and but Andrea already added some comments here. But originally, question was, can we use other language like Python, for example?
To run what, this PowerShell module?
I think to replace PowerShell.
I'm not sure if you can execute PowerShell from Python. Probably you can. I'm not expert in Python. Probably you can. Yeah, of course you can. Be 99% you can. I think you can, but it's like depends on what this question is about. Because if it's just run the PowerShell, I'm not sure if it makes sense, to be honest. Yeah, that's the first thing. The second thing, maybe the question was related if you can deploy or execute some API from Python. Yeah. So yes, this is also you can. Yeah.
Yes, but for example, you can use Python to execute some APIs, and with these APIs, do the
That's
same
true.
thing. Yes.
Yeah, but in this way, you probably would be building the same what I built in Python in PowerShell here. Yeah, which is really tremendous amount of work. So I do not recommend this. Yeah. I mean, I'm always asking, like, maybe someone would wanted to understand if he can just do that. But I'm always, if I'm hearing some specific question, I'm always asking, okay, why you want to run something like this from Python? Yeah, what's your original idea sits behind this? Yeah, I can see any. So
Yes, we have author of this question with us, and I added this person to our panelist list. And if you want, you can ask this question with
Hey,
this
Etienne,
microphone.
if you're okay, you can ask question or precise this. I'm fine. If you don't want to, that's also okay.
Hello.
We can hear you.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I asked this question because I'm really familiar with Python language, and I just want to know if I can deploy all this stuff with Python. If there is another option to deploy all these services or ADF.
Mm-hmm. Again, I understand that you might be familiar with Python, but again, if you are building the automation, probably you are doing this with some tools like GitHub Action or like Git or like Azure DevOps. Yeah, in Azure DevOps and any other languages and any other tools, like you have opportunity to execute just PowerShell module. Yeah, so again. What I would recommend, don't try to use just the language that you know already, just because you know it, but try to use appropriate way how to execute this, because PowerShell is appropriate way to automate things. Yeah. So I understand. Probably, you probably could tell me better, like if you can execute some commands like this or install PowerShell module. I don't remember. Presumably you are able to do that. Yeah, install some PowerShell module in the session and etc.
Maybe I can do it, but I never did it, so that's why I was asking if I can use Python to deploy all the Azure stuff. But if the proper way is to use the PowerShell language, maybe I will try to learn a little bit of the language.
Yeah, definitely try to do that, because the deployment generally, with some exceptions, should be done with PowerShell or some tasks. Yeah, or Bash, for example. Yeah, scripts. Maybe some exceptions, like sometimes you have some libraries, like for deployment to the Databricks, you can use, as far as I remember, it was some Python library. So you can do that, yeah, as well. But this is not Python library. So by default, you won't be able to do that easily, like with Python library. Yeah? Okay, thank you for this question. Very good one. Actually, I need to just double check if I can. I don't remember. I was working with Python like about 2 years ago last time, and I remember that I was running some exec application. So most of the things are possible. It doesn't mean that you should do this. Okay, let me move on to the next step. So you saw a very basic thing. Then you saw how you can actually control the behavior a little bit more. And then let me add another thing, how to configure the deployment for other environment. Yeah, because the first step would be to deploy dev, but then you would like to deploy to other environment. Yeah. So there's another example like this. Yeah, so I've added new variable here, like this is the code of our environment, and how this code will be used. This code will be used as additional parameters here to the command that we already saw. Yeah, this parameter is called stage. And because we provide this parameter, the publish action, the publish command will be looking for some specific configuration file in the deployment subfolder, as you can see here, with the name like config hyphen and then the name of the environment here. Yeah, this env will be replaced appropriately by the value defined here in the variable. Yeah, so let me show you that quickly. So if we have some deployment, I'm not sure if I have here. No, not here. Maybe here. Not, also not. Maybe here. This is which one? Big factor sample 2. Don't have anything here. Oops. No. Okay. So I will show you that later in the Azure DevOps. This is, let me test maybe one more thing. It should be here. Yeah, the deployment. Yeah, so this is deployment. And here I have multiple config files. This is just for test purposes and unit tests that I have for this module. Yeah. But actually, if you add the env like this, it will be looking for that one of the configuration files. Yeah. In that configuration file, you can provide all the values that you would like to replace between environments. Yeah, whatever it is, you know, link service pointer or URL, or maybe something else, and etc. etc. At least one thing you should have, I believe. In every single environment of Azure Data Factory, you have link service to the Azure Key Vault. I believe you store all the secrets, connection strings, and passwords in Azure Key Vault rather than in Azure Data Factory, even if it's encrypted. So at least this link to the Azure Key Vault should be replaced, because again, I believe you have separate Azure Key Vault instances per environment, not the one for everything. Yeah. So if you replace just the link services, pointing to the link service, that would be it. Yeah. So this is how we are doing this. Yeah. From the command perspective, you are providing this just the environment code, and it will be pointing to the appropriate configuration file. And this is the example of the file. Okay. So this is this example is the CSV format, but actually you can provide the same information with JSON format if you prefer. Okay. I personally prefer CSV format because it's like easier and more compact, you know. So the CSV contains few columns here. Yeah, like 4 columns actually. Yeah, type, name, path, and value. Type is the subfolder where the object is belongs to. Yeah, so it's actually type of the object. It's link service, pipeline, and etc. and etc. You can find that very easily, you know, looking at the subfolder that you have here. Yeah. Then there's a name of the file and automatically name of the object in Azure Data Factory. Okay. And then the property you would like to update. Okay, the property is provided like this, like a path to the property in the JSON file. And let me show you how to do that, because the last one would be the required value that you would like to have between you deploy this to the target environment. Yeah. So let me show you that you know, this linked service to Azure Key Vault, these properties, how to find out these properties, how to find out this path. Yeah. So it should be this one, linked services, and the one that I have here is this one. So actually, if you open that kind of file in Visual Studio Code, for example, if you click on the object that you want to replace, the value you want to replace for, so this is the object. Yeah, we want to update value for this property. So here on the top, we can see the whole path. Yeah, so we are in this file. There's a properties here at the beginning, then there's a type properties and base URL. This is your path. Yeah, actually you can start from the type properties, or you can start from the very beginning using $ at the beginning. Yeah, so in this case, I'm using $, as you can see. So I need to just provide the full path, just starting from the very top. Yeah, by default, because all of the object has properties at the beginning, then by default you can avoid this $ as a prefix, and then you are starting defining this path from the type properties, which is just the next property in each object. Yeah, at least in Azure Data Factory. Yeah, so this is the way how you can define all the values that you would like to substitute during the deployment process. So as you can see, this is the often problem, how to do that. People are preparing some scripts, doing this in different methods, maybe using some additional task in Azure DevOps, and etc. etc. There's plenty of approaches how to do this. And in this way, you don't have to worry about this, because what you need to do only is to provide the config file in CSV or JSON format, and that's it. Actually, the last thing, the last step is to provide the parameter to define, okay, this is my configuration. This is my configuration file for this environment. This is the other configuration file for other environment. Yeah. So in that way, it will replace everything what need to be replaced, updated, and the next step will be to publish everything to the target Azure Data Factory. Okay. There's some combination how you can do this in different way. Maybe you would like to have this in different locations, so then you can provide the whole path to the config file. It also doesn't a problem. And as you can see, there's still the same parameter, but the command is smart enough to realize this and use the whole path, or just build the full path based on the environment shortcode. Yeah. Okay, I'm not going to show you the other, maybe this one very quickly. The other things in the options, pretty important, is actually the objects like excludes and includes. This allows you to do the selective deployment, as I mentioned earlier today. Okay, so by this you can define what objects should be exclude or include in the deployment. Depends on your preferences. Yeah. But be careful, you can use only one of those, yeah, includes or excludes. You cannot use both, because by default it will use includes then. And then again, if you define that kind of list, which you can define in the code, or you can define also in the file directly. So you can define the code only once and then use or changing the file only. And again, this is the same thing. You are providing the option. And if we added the stage here, then we have complete command that allows us to deploy with specific behavior or option, and for specific environment with appropriate variables and values. Yeah, this is it. This is how it works in PowerShell. But again, I promise you that I will show you that how it works in Azure DevOps. And sorry, I know that we are run out of time right now, 13 minutes, but I already mentioned that I don't want to hurry this, because it's important to understand this part, then you will get much easier how everything else works.
Yes, sure, don't worry about time.
Okay, cool. So, okay, so we've done this with PowerShell. I think I believe it's not that tricky and not that hard, yeah, to understand this code. It's, I believe, I prepared this. I mean, actually, even if I tried to do this more complex, I couldn't, yeah, because that was the intention of the whole tool, yeah. The intention and the goal of the whole deployment was to have everything in one command and provide appropriate parameters. It should do everything for you, yeah. So this is actually what we have. And if you want to complex your scenario, yeah, you can add some additional options, or you can define the selective deployment, and etc. etc. But actually, that's it. Yeah, everything is going on under the hood. Okay, let's go back to the slides then. So as I mentioned, Azure DevOps has its own extension which is built on top of that PowerShell module. So now when we know how this PowerShell module works and what kind of parameters we are passing to it, then will be much easier to understand how it works from the Azure DevOps tasks. Yeah, I'm not going to discuss about these things, but as you can see, you know, in the extension, you can install this from the marketplace, or you can find this in the Azure DevOps directly. And this slide was updated a few weeks ago, but I've got already over 2,000 installation. Each installation means separate environments, separate organization in terms of Azure DevOps. Yeah. So it's pretty cool. I'm pretty proud of it. And as you can see, even more important things for me is like there's 21 people said, yeah, this is a great tool, 5 stars. Yeah, and I have only 5 stars, which is great because from the very beginning, again, the intention was to build very robust and very good quality tool. Yeah, because you need to rely on this. Yeah, you need to make sure the deployment happens as you expect. Yeah. Okay, so I'm not going to go through all the capabilities of this PowerShell module and the extension of it. Yeah, you can find that out in here on this slide. Already I covered few of them during the demo or during the previous slides. So you can find it also in the documentation or in the slides. So I'm not going to discuss the details of them, but actually it's, you know, I'm using this from the very beginning. I'm using it in my work. I'm using it in my company for my customers and etc. So I'm testing it every day when I need to deploy Azure Data Factory. So actually it contains everything what you need. Yeah. And if you find something that it's not there, just raise a ticket, raise an issue in the GitHub, and you will see that almost 200 tickets has been already closed. Yeah, so it's live product. And this Azure DevOps extension, the publish task. Okay, so this is what I will show you in a minute, but in the screenshot maybe not very well seeing because it's pretty small. So I will show you that in a minute in the live demo in Azure DevOps. Yeah, but again, key capabilities are here. They are exactly the same like in PowerShell because it's using the same kind of function behind the scenes. Yeah. Okay. And then selective deployment, as I mentioned you and show you that in this includes, excludes. Here in Azure DevOps, you can just define this directly in the task inline in the text box, or you can define them in the file, in the separate file, and point to this file, whatever you prefer. Yeah, and the good thing is that you can use wildcards. Yeah, so you don't have to define every single object separately. You can define we can define them by using the wildcards, which means you can use start or brackets, and in that way you can define bunch of objects in one go. Yeah, in one line. Yeah, as you can see on this example, all triggers will be selected. Yeah, for include or exclude, whatever you prefer, or all the data sets which name starts with ds underscore. Yeah, or similar to this pl underscore, but for all the objects, not only for data set or pipelines. Yeah, or maybe linked service which has some 3 characters at the beginning, the key vault, and then something else. Yeah, so that kind of options are possible and helping a lot, because, you know, when you're developing something in the future, of course developers will add some more, you know, objects, and as long as they will be following the naming convention that you agreed at the beginning, then that kind of CI/CD process will still work based on your agreement and assessment. Yeah. Okay, so this is how we can define the selective deployment very easily. And yeah, the option here, like how to define inline with the file or inline. So actually, if you like to use the exclude approach, so you need to just add the minus at the beginning of the line, yeah, defining the object. So that's the small differences. So instead of using two separate text box, include or exclude, you can just use plus or minus. By default is plus, yeah. Okay, and then let's go and see, you know, how this is configured in the DevOps. So I have some links here because I never remember. I have too many pipelines and projects, so I would never find out this during the presentation. So I have links. Here, yes, we are in good place. So this is the first one. Let me just double check very quickly. Yeah, so I show you that already, yeah, but you know, this is a Microsoft approach using NPM library, so we're not going to describe this again. We saw this, so this is the build pipeline, how to generate ARM template, okay? The second one is actually the same thing, using still Microsoft NPM library behind the scenes, but this time you will be using my tool, ADF tools, okay? And ADF tools actually wrap up all the steps that you need to do, yeah? So in one step, you can do everything, even if you still, you know, preferring Microsoft approach to deployment and generate ARM template, but you can use just one task, which is called build Azure Data Factory code. And here you can choose, even actually choose two options, because there's two options and I will explain them later, okay, the differences. The Microsoft one is this one, validate and export ARM template. This is the additional one I will explain you later on the slide, okay? So this is the build pipeline, okay? So with this one, we can generate ARM template still, using ADF tools, using this task. Instead of having several steps, we can have one. Let me actually show you one more thing. Hopefully we'll see this here. So I mentioned you on the slide before that the NPM library is not very user-friendly, yeah? This is the proof. So we have some things. We see some red lines here, which is actually not errors, but even worse, because the tool saying that there's some errors. Look, there's some errors, there's some red lines here, so you should be scared, yeah? But at the end, really, they are not errors. They are really like something like, I would say, maybe warnings, maybe nothing, because, you know, you don't expect every single file in the configuration, in the repository, because you might not have, like, maybe you don't have triggers in your Azure Data Factory, yeah? And this tool will be complaining about this. You don't have any files in trigger folder. What's the problem? It's not a problem. It's not an error, because you are continuing the work, and at the end you are generating the ARM template. So at the end, as you can see, everything finished successfully, but you can see in the log a lot of red things, which is bad in my opinion, which is very misleading things, yeah? Okay, anyway, that's what I meant by not very user-friendly NPM. And there's other reasons, but I'm not going to go and display and share the details. That doesn't make sense. You know, if you use the ADF tools I created, you have only one task and provide the parameters, and that's it. Okay, the other one is like if we build this with SQL player ADF tools. At this time, we'll be doing two things. So as I mentioned to you, validating export ARM template, generating ARM templates, but we can also execute something which is called build only, simple validate, and it's checking few things. If you are using my approach, if you are using deployment from code, and if you have, for example, configuration code with the variables and with the values and etc. So this step validates not only the code, not only the JSON files, etc., but also it validates if the paths in the configuration file are appropriate. Yeah, so it's reading all the configuration file in the subfolder and checking even before you start deploying the correct thing. Yeah, so it's very helpful in the build pipeline, yeah, to use it to make sure that if someone provides some values or some path, this pipeline can be integrated with your pull request and make sure that before you make decision, okay, approve this pass and actually doesn't contain any problems on any errors or wrong paths and etc. It's doing more things. You can find those details in the documentation as well. Okay, so I'm doing 3 things here. This one is optional, but I'm doing this anyway. It just takes a few seconds, so it's not a problem. And then the last step would be this one. And this one is to deploy code in your release branch, in your release pipeline to just the target Azure Data Factory. So this is the step that we were looking for. Yeah, this is to publish everything. And actually you don't need anything else. This is just the one step you need to just configure. And as you can see, there's a target subscription, there's a target resource group, there's a target data factory name, there's a source path, which in my PowerShell script was called root folder. So you recognize this information already, yeah? And location, yeah? So you recognize this because we saw them defined as a variable in the PowerShell. So this is why I showed you all those things, yeah? And here you have some additional information, additional options, yeah? That's why they are in this second section here. So you can provide the stage as a stage code or environment code, as we saw previously. So for example, you can put UAT here. Or you can provide the stage as a full location, full path to the configuration file, yeah, because ultimately it's a path to the environment configuration file, yeah. So it can be CSV, it can be JSON, so whatever you prefer, yeah. Again, some very common options like delete object not in source by default is off, start stop triggers by default is on, create new Azure Data Factory instance by default is on, but you can decide what you want to do, yeah. And then filtering type here, this is the selective capability, yeah. By selecting none, you are saying that you want to deploy everything. By selecting this on that, you are providing, in this case, you are providing the link to the file, or you can define the same things actually inline in this text box here, yeah. And there's some advanced options here, but probably you will never touch this, yeah, at least not for the first few months using this tool. And that's it, actually. It does everything for you with this one step, providing you very detailed information in the log. Also, but if you are doing some troubleshooting and you are feeling that even this extensive log doesn't tells you the detailed information, you can also switch on the verbose or debug mode in the pipeline, yeah? So it will show you even more, but it will be like really, really huge portion of information in the log, yeah? So, but yeah, everything is possible. Troubleshooting with this is very simple because this is what I found from my over 20 years of experience work in IT, that if you have very detailed and precise information in terms of errors, error messages, and etc. So your life will be easier in terms of troubleshooting or finding the problems, yeah, because this is what often I saw, yeah. If you don't have precise information what happened, or even worse, if the error message is misleading, that's a really real problem, yeah, because you might spend hours or days investigate what is going on, yeah, actually. So this provides you a lot of detailed information. Let me see if I have, if I can show you in the release. Again, I'm not running this, yeah, because it doesn't make sense. I will show you that last run with this step. Okay, it's not very big, but it's, as you can see, it's exactly the same kind of information as we saw in the PowerShell session, yeah, in Visual Studio Code. Yeah, so it's showing everything what is going on. Okay, and that's the approach with the ADF tools, with this extension to Azure DevOps. Yeah, you have only one step which does everything for you: stopping, starting triggers, replacing the variables per environment, and etc. and etc. Everything what you need to do. Yeah. Okay. So that's almost it. This is some configurations already. I covered this a little bit, so I'm not going to discuss this again. And one more slide is about this build. So as I mentioned, the build in the CI process can cover, you know, things like checking the JSON files inside of your code in your repo, and check the configuration files, if the file exists actually, if the file name is exactly the same like the object name in the JSON, and that kind of simple things. Of course, it will never replace what Microsoft validates in their task. Yeah, so that's why if you prefer using these ADF tools, you still might want to add the both tasks. Yeah, so the validate with the build only method, and separate task in build pipeline, validate and export ARM template, even if you are not going to use this ARM template in the release pipeline. Yeah, because the good thing is that this task validate the whole code, and it will be validated by appropriate, probably updated Microsoft library. Yeah, so this is the good thing. Okay, and the last thing, but pretty important, that, you know, I mentioned you that at the beginning it was only one publish task, but then I've added two of them. Yeah, so another one was this build task that you can include in your build pipeline to just verify if build is okay, or include this as a part of your pull request build. And the last one, the third one, is test connection. This method is also available in PowerShell, so you can do it in PowerShell, but also you can add this task in the Azure DevOps. And what it's doing actually is it's testing linked services. Why this is so much important? Because at least I saw that several times in my experience in my different projects. Yeah, that, you know, some people were investigating something, why something in Azure Data Factory doesn't work, and you know how long it takes sometimes. Yeah, and they, after spending several hours, they just realized that at the end it was wrong linked service to one key vault or something else. Yeah, but they actually started investigated from the pipeline high and far away. Yeah, you know, so this task is actually to save time for multiple people, for multiple teams potentially. Yeah, if you add this task after the deployment, if you defined what kind of link services you would like to test, it can save you a lot of time. Yeah, because it will check exactly the same way like you are checking by clicking this test connection in Azure Data Factory UI. It will test the connection by these link services. Yeah. So it's still in preview, and it will be in preview because it's using another API method like everything else in this PowerShell module, but this API method is not documented and is not exposed by Microsoft. Yeah, so that's why it's in preview, because it's your risk if you are going to use this on production or not. It's not changing anything, it's just testing something. But you must be aware that it might stop at some point, yeah, because Microsoft might decide that change something in this API which is undocumented. Yeah. Okay. The last slide is actually summary to just discuss what we actually learned during the last, oh my God, it's 1.5 hours. Sorry, guys, that I just steal a lot of your time, but I hope it was worth to learn something like this in more details without rush. So let me summarize. I promise this is the last slide. Let me summarize this and, you know, to wrap up what we learned and what is the differences, because I'm aware that this is plenty of information, and right now you might be very, very much confused what I presented and what is going on actually, how many paths, how many methods we have, and etc. etc. Yeah, so this slide is the most important one. Okay. So as I mentioned, we can use the IDF publish branch to deploy Azure Data Factory, but this is actually deprecated. In my opinion, you shouldn't use this, because there's no reason to use this anymore. Yeah, if you can automate this process and generate ARM templates in your build pipeline. Yeah, so the other appropriate way is to export and generate ARM template from the collaboration branch. Yeah. And in this way, we'll have ARM template. The other way, if you prefer, you can use IDF tools, which will do the same, which will execute and export ARM template for you, but just with one step instead of few. Yeah. And from using this ARM template, you can generate using several steps in your release pipeline. You know, you need to remember, you know, stop triggers, start triggers, deploy ARM template, deploy global parameters, and etc. etc. And then in that way you will deploy to the target environment, or you can actually use ADF tools to not using ARM template approach deployment, but to validate code. Yeah, just double check if it's okay. Then wrap up this as an artifact. We don't have ARM template here on this place. Okay, and then again using ADF tools. So this right side is using ADF tools, and the second method that I described directly from code on only using ADF tools. Yeah, and we are not using ARM template in this path. And using again ADF tools and deploy task. Potentially, optionally, we can use test link services if you want. That's why you can see this test here. And deploy everything again to the target Azure Data Factories and to the different environments. Yeah. So this is actually what I was describing for the last 90 minutes. Yeah. At the end, you can see this very nicely on the one slide, what kind of options you have, what kind of paths you can choose, and everything depends on you. You know my preferences, you know why, you know the differences. The choice is yours. Yeah. Some resources, so you will be able to click some additional links if you want to read more and read some details and understand some details and etc. So this is the slide with these links. And actually, yes, that's it from my side. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them and discuss any other topics if you like to.
Yes, thank you, Kamil, a lot for this amazing session. And maybe when we're waiting for more questions from our audience, I have small question. Maybe you know some big companies who are using your approach.
Oh, except the companies that I use this and I implemented this because this is official approach in Avanade, at least in UK and I, because previously we had some PowerShell scripts and it was problem with maintenance that because the teams are doing the copy of the scripts and then the things are changing, and you can change the script, you can make it better, etc. So I said, guys, okay, I have this tool, it's open source, I'm maintaining this code actually, yeah, so I'm just monitoring what kind of issue happening and etc. So instead of using our own copy or our own kind of scripts, we can use this one. So we decided to use this. So we are using this in several big customers, but I don't remember, to be honest with you. Many companies are using this. As you saw, over 2,000 installations. I at least knew about few of them. I don't want to mention them from the names because I don't want to share like what kind of customers I'm working on. I was working with. But yeah, there's a big companies. You can imagine, I'm based in London. I'm working for London companies for the last 3 years. So they are big companies.
Yes, great. Okay, I want to remember that we have special prize for a person who will ask a question.
I'll ask a question.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead, Andrea.
I don't need the prize. I don't need the prize. I just want to ask the question. So, Kamil, thank you very much for all of the session. This is amazing. Usually, people talk about data factory, and they just talk about creating the data factory pipelines, the activities, etc. All of the usual ETL stuff, but they don't really talk about the deployment. And the deployment part is not as easy as it might feel, especially in a DevOps environment. So this is a real good session. But my question is a tricky one. So we are talking about Azure Data Factory, and obviously there's also Synapse Analytics, which is almost copy-paste the same thing, 99%. So what changes to the things that you said would you apply to Synapse, or would you do exactly the same thing?
Very good question. Thank you, Andrea, for this question. So in this slide, actually, you can see there's the last link is to the GitHub or MySQL player organization or profile to the azure.synapse.tools. So this is actually what you said. This is a copy, almost copy paste. It's not like just only copy paste from Azure Data Factory tools. Because on the first side, the Synapse, it looks very similar, or if not the same, like to the Azure Data Factory. Yeah, you have the same kind of capabilities, but even more. Yeah, but behind the scenes, there's a different kind of API. First of thing, there's a different namespace. So maybe from the user perspective, you can see the changes, you can see the differences, but there's plenty of them, yeah? And there's even more differences in terms of deployment. So I started doing this, like, I don't know, a year ago, because I was, I was asking for these things, for this tool, for Synapse as well. So I started, investigating this. So that's why I created this, this project, and I copied what I could. Unfortunately for Synapse, the PowerShell module from Microsoft, which I was using for Azure Data Factory, is not that good as Azure Data Factory. There's a lot of gaps, there's a lot of inconsistencies. And also, so I started using some APIs, and there's still not all the API commands that allows you to deploy everything for Synapse, and etc. etc. So, long story short, I started doing this. It's still in preview. You are good to go with this if you want to play, because maybe ADF tools, or maybe PowerShell, or you want to just do something quickly on dev environment. But I do not recommend right now this for production, because it is preview and it will probably stay preview. Why? Because this time Microsoft get lesson learned from what they heard from me, what they heard from community about Azure Data Factory and the deployments challenges. So they take lesson learned and build actually better solution for Synapse now. And pretty recently, like a few weeks ago, I tested Synapse deployment with Microsoft extension. Okay, so there's Microsoft extension in Azure DevOps, for Azure DevOps, which actually deploy everything in terms of Synapse for you, with some exceptions, but they are understandable exceptions, like infrastructure parts. Yeah. So, for example, the tool does not deploy the dedicated SQL pool or any other pool. Actually, yeah, it's only deploy the default one, which is SQL serverless pool, which is fine. Yeah, because you are not paying for this. Anything else you need to just deploy. You need to deploy as a prerequisite, as a step first, like as a part of the infrastructure. So that's the summary. For Synapse, I would encourage you to use Microsoft tool. Actually, this is something that I started investigate recently. I started drawing and writing blog post about this. So, presenting what we can do right now, what we can't, and how we can approach, because in Synapse you have much more different kind of objects, yeah, comparing to ADF. So it's even more complex situation for deployment, yeah. So I'm preparing blog post. It should be published probably next week. So I encourage you to take a look on my blog next week as well. So you will see some summary or approach to how to do this, how to do that, and what kind of other object we have in Synapse and how to deploy them. Yeah, this post will be live and it will be changing because everything about and around Synapse is changing. So as I'm getting new information, I will be updating those about the Synapse. So there will be more information about this. I will be presenting and publishing more around the Synapse, especially because since this year, I have 2 clients where we are using Synapse only. No, sorry, not only ADF also, but Synapse much more. So we are also, taking a look at how to do this better, and etc. So we have this experience right now. Yeah. So yeah, thank you very much. This is a very good question.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank
yeah,
you very
Microsoft
much.
definitely do a great job this time.
We'll see all the changes as you mentioned. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, exactly. Is there any other questions?
No. Okay, thank you, Kamil, a lot for your time, and maybe hope to see you in person, maybe in the next year on SQL Day.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Take care, guys. Thank you
Everyone.
very much. Thank you for having me, and have a great evening.
Yes, and maybe this prize, this book we will send to this guy who asked about languages which we can use to deploy infrastructure. And maybe one more prize to Andre. Yes.
Surprises are always good. Is it food? Is it food?
Food for our brain.
Andrea, so it's still your favorite kind of things, yeah? Food is always was your favorite.
Anyway, it was good to talk to you, Kamil, and Taras as well.
Same
Thank
here,
you very
guys.
much, both of you.
Nice to see you again.
Thank you.
Hopefully we will, as Taras mentioned, hopefully we see you each other soon in person. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.